One of the problems with dealing with supernatural or paranormal or just bizarre events is that you usually only have one witness. So what happens when you have hundreds, including the entire police department? If you're familiar with the Coachella Valley, it's probably because of its music festivals. But did you know it's also the main road across the desert into the LA basin? Used every day by hundreds of truckers, visitors, and tourists. It also sits above one of the most seismically active areas in the world, the San Andreas Fault, which runs all through the Mojave out through Los Angeles to the coast. And where do all these planes, trains, and automobiles come from? Well, across America, of course. But is it just possible that there's other beings that use this roadway too? In the early morning hours of Tuesday, March 1977, Sheriff's Deputy Pat Runyon was sitting in his patrol car when, looking to the east, he happened to see a bright yellowish-red light at an estimated altitude of 500 feet slowly start to approach. Thinking it was an airliner, he watched in wonder as the object suddenly picked up incredible speed and literally streaked over him before heading west towards the nearby city of Palm Springs. Seconds later, Deputy Jameson of Desert Hot Springs, located just west of Runyon, saw the same object approach at a high rate of speed, before again zooming directly overhead and disappearing in a flash. Moments later, two more sheriff's deputies near the town of Edgemont, further west, got a good look at the strange craft as it ripped through the night sky above them. Describing the object as structured, looking like a, quote, cigar with a light on each end. And again, the craft continued west towards Los Angeles, in total silence but at an extremely high rate of speed. The object's flight path now took it over the March Air Force Base just east of the city, where several California Highway Patrol officers, as well as members of the base's own security police, were alerted to it, but could only watch in wonder as it tore past them before anyone in the tower could get a track on it. As it crossed over the heavily traveled air corridor near the Los Angeles airport, it was seen by even more people as it now headed toward the ocean. While in Long Beach, south of LAX, two more sheriff's deputies reported they saw two bright lights going over the airport itself, although no radar track was reported. By 4 a.m. Tuesday morning, the Los Angeles Police Department reported its deputies had seen the object at 5 different locations as it sped overhead. They all described it as a bright light with an orange tinge, just as the first witness, Deputy Runyon, had reported over 100 miles away in Coachella. Apparently, the object ultimately crossed the coast and continued out over the ocean, where it was quickly lost to sight. In the aftermath of the reports, an Air Force spokesman was quoted as saying, "There were no missile or rocket testing scheduled, which may have been mistaken for UFOs, and certainly nothing flying as low as 500 feet over civilian-populated areas." Interestingly, Los Angeles city officials said that they had monitored civil defense radio reports that indicated the object had been seen as far north as Sacramento, but that was over 300 miles away. In the end, astronomers at the Griffith Park Observatory offered the possibility that what all the witnesses had seen was actually a rare astronomical phenomenon called a double meteor, in which fragments of a larger meteor break up in the atmosphere, causing multiple lights. and that the object probably crashed into the ocean after passing over both the Mojave Desert and the city of Los Angeles. But does that really explain a structured object that looked like a, quote, cigar with bright lights at either end, flying silently along at 500 feet, as reported by numerous sheriff's deputies, police officers, and the Air Force's own security personnel? So here we have what you could call a mega event. But if you look at it in pieces, people saw slightly different things. Some saw lights, some saw structured aircraft, and some might have seen what was a meteor. But did all three things happen at once? I don't know. If you're out there and there's aircraft, it's easy to misidentify a light in the sky. But if you can see it clearly through binoculars, And as far as being a plane, well, if you're 100 miles up the coast, you're not going to see something at 500 feet. It has to be way up there, which would suggest a meteorite. Now, would you be surprised if I told you that this area has a history going back well over 100 years of strange things in the sky? September 1954. In the same area, just 50 miles north of Coachella, but along the same fault axis, an unusual object was seen in the night sky 2 nights in a row. This time, again, the main witnesses were sheriff's deputies, as well as Marine Corps MPs stationed nearby. This article describes how deputies along Bear Valley Road in the Mojave saw a bright light clustered with strange red lights fly quickly and silently overhead. But this time, 2 nights in a row. It moved from side to side and then up and down as it passed from east to west, before again disappearing over the horizon along the same vector towards Los Angeles. Looking through high-powered binoculars, they said it didn't resemble any craft they'd ever seen before. And upon reporting it to the CAA and Air Force Command at Riverside, we're told the military authorities simply had no idea what it could be either. But let's go back even farther in the same area. Over 100 years, December 1914, when workers for the Santa Fe Railroad began burning up the telegraph lines over what the paper later described as a strange aircraft with 2 bright lights appearing after dark and then flying silently through the night sky. Beginning to see a pattern here? But instead of a 1 or 2 night visitation, this craft was seen for over 2 weeks in a row, appearing after dark to zip around and even sometimes forming a pattern in the sky before continuing on its path and vanishing. And again, along the San Andreas fault line as all the other reports in Coachella many decades later. I think this oldest article in the paper summed it up pretty well, saying, quote, "Whence it comes, whether it goes, and where it is kept in the daytime are questions puzzling the desert folk." And maybe it still does. So there you have it, over 150 years of weird events in the sky along the same stretch of highway in the Coachella Valley along the San Andreas Fault. Now, I was out there camping last month, which was December of 2021, when I saw lights in the sky. I took this picture. Then I took this video. Now, I'd love to tell you that this was UFOs, but really, I later found out it was antique biplanes on their way to an air show. But for a few seconds, seeing them cross the sky above me without making any real noise was kind of cool. Now, what does all this mean? I can't tell you. All I can tell you is if you want to see strange stuff in the sky, apparently this stretch of the Mojave Desert is the place to do it. I'm M.L. Behrman. I'll see you next time.